welcome everyone to today's presentation, Career Pathways, What Are the Opportunities? I'm Mike Richmond, your host for Exemplar Global's Expo on Career Pathways. This session is presented by Andrew Baines, and Andrew, of course, is Exemplar Global's president and CEO. Andrew has a wealth of experience as a leader in the conformity assessment field, including as an auditor of organizations' conformity to management system standards. In this session, Andrew's going to give you kind of the lay of the land of the broad range of opportunities that exist for conformity assessment professionals of all backgrounds in our industry. So, Andrew, thanks for joining us. It's great to see you.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you for that introduction. Careers are something that are really important to all of us, aren't they? And we use them not only to feed our families and have an income, but also to get some satisfaction of life. And oftentimes, I think to do something meaningful. Now, I've been fortunate enough to have spent something over 30 years involved with auditing and around auditing. So I know something of the career pathway opportunities that are open from my own experience. But, certainly we see this as an area of great interest to our community that we serve. And naturally enough, people are open to where it might be able to take them. So today, I just wanted to explore some of the opportunities around career possibilities and pathways that could be there. So Exemplar Global was set up something over 35 years ago now, when two organisations, RAB in North America and QSA in Australia, were brought together. Both of those organisations were themselves established in order to certify auditors. And indeed, that's what we've done for over 35 years. We've got a population of many thousands of auditors. We were established to do four things, essentially: to certify people, primarily auditors, but we also do other things like engineers, to also certify the organisations that train people, those auditors that are trained. Now, you go back 35 years and there was an obvious connection here between the auditors being competent to do what they were there to do, but also that the training providers were training them appropriately. So we had that exposure. These days, we've got something over 300 training providers that are doing auditor training, and that's not all of them by any means. There's an awful lot of auditor training going on out there. So having been trained as an auditor, what on earth do you do with it? Well, back in those early days, the primary reason for doing it was for auditors that were going to go and work for certification bodies. A couple of examples could be SAI Global or SGS or BSI. There's lots of them about, employing many thousands of auditors around the world. So that's an obvious opportunity for people to go and work for as an auditor. We also have two other purposes. One of them is to encourage the ongoing professional development of the people that we serve, both the training providers and indeed the auditors. And as you look to develop your career, obviously going back and getting further training in professional development sense opens up further opportunities to you. I'll talk more about that later. And the fourth reason we were established, these are all stated in our constitution, so it's a very clear sense of purpose for us at Exemplar Global, is to promote best practices. So all of these are entirely consistent with encouraging people to better themselves, to learn more, to expand and diversify, and to open up further opportunities than perhaps the obvious ones. So, as I say, back in the early days, it was primarily around auditors that were going to work for certification bodies. At that time, it was almost exclusively ISO 9001, which was for quality management system. But again, that's changed over recent years. Oftentimes, the certification bodies themselves operate as training providers, and they train their own auditors as well. So an approach to certification bodies, if you're interested, is always a good place to start if that's the direction you wish to go. Now, those certification bodies, at least the majority of the credible ones anyway, are accredited by other organisations called accreditation bodies. So accreditation bodies approve those certification bodies, and they do that by auditing, amongst other things. So accreditation bodies also need auditors. Those auditors too have to be trained, and they have oversight of what the certification bodies do. Often they come from certification bodies. Now, what those certification bodies are doing is to go out and certify many other organisations as to their management systems or product certifications. There's different types of certifications that are possible. But the organisations that I'm talking about here really do anything. Like, they could be doing manufacturing, they could be in service, they might be in healthcare, they could be in education, aerospace, it could be automotive, different sectors. The list is endless. There's really no limitation as to what type of organisation could be certified by a certification body. However, what is clear in that certification process is that those organisations all need to have auditors themselves, people that are going to do internal auditing. So they send their auditors off to be trained by these same training providers oftentimes. So by no means is going into that third-party independent auditor cycle, whether that be with certification bodies or accreditation bodies, by no means is that the only opportunity. In fact, that's probably the minority. In fact, it's certainly the minority. Most of the people that are being trained as auditors go back into their own organisations and undertake what we call internal auditing or possibly second-party auditing. I'll talk more about that too in a moment. How many are we talking about? Well, we don't know. There's no specific number around how many are trained, but from our own experience as a certifier of the training providers, it's many tens of thousands a year around the world, many tens of thousands, probably hundreds of thousands of people a year are being trained as auditors. And most of them go back into their own organisations, as I say. Now, that doesn't mean that should be the end of your training. We would still encourage you to do the professional development that is part of our mission in life. And that requires ongoing training. That training could be in further skills. It could be around some of the soft skills. It could be expanding into the areas of certification that you're working in, like 9000 is for quality management. It could be into environmental management systems or health and safety or numerous others. All of those organisations also have customers, consumers.
Andrew, I'm sorry, I wanted to go back a second because it strikes me as you were mentioning that there's a lot of value, I think, in the training that maybe doesn't necessarily devolve into just becoming an auditor. I mean, there's value in learning about the standards and what the importance of these standards may be, even if you're just an auditee, right? I mean, would you say that that's a valid statement to make also?
Oh, look, absolutely, yes. Understanding what the standards are doing is a process of learning as well. I actually think understanding as much about the organisations that you're going to be auditing is relevant too. You know, for me, I always found it useful to understand how commercial organisations were established and why they were focused on returning dividends to the shareholders. So extending your training from just the audit practice to your general training in industry, in sectors, in disciplines that are there, all of which are relevant. My background was in the food industry, so risk management was an important factor there. So understanding about risk management would be another one. That's not confined to the food industry either, obviously. It's a factor in many industries. So yes, you're absolutely right, Mike. One of the areas that we often find differentiates auditors from perhaps a tick box type of auditor that really nobody likes to think of, through to those that are perhaps more rounded as an auditor, is around soft skills. Some of the soft skills that involved, like, how do you make people feel comfortable? How do you have empathy? How do you get people to talk to you in a comfortable way? We do something in Exemplar Global called a work style assessment, which is well, at least one model of it is specifically tailored for auditors. But there are many other versions of that as well that could be used for different circumstances. So self-awareness, developing your skills, extending from being a team member to a team leader would be another one. So you're managing audits as well. That's a different set of skills that an auditor might take that professional development into. Good point, Mike. Thank you. So as I was saying, the organisations that are certified by certification bodies, all the ones that have the internal auditors, you have to have at least one internal audit a year. So every one of those has to have somebody doing that. But they also have these customers, consumers who use the products or the services. And we find many times that they too have auditors that check out those customers as well. This works both ways. The retailers that sell the products of the organisations themselves often have auditors, supply chain auditors, that are checking out that the products that they're buying to sell on to the consumers are appropriate to their standards. We often too find that organisations are supplied by other people. I didn't want to overcomplicate the slide with this one, Michael, but they're supplied with raw materials and they do their own supply chain auditing of their suppliers. So there's a real complex world going on in here of checking the checkers, people that are checking the supply chain, checking the raw materials, checking the processes that they're running through, all sorts of things that are going on. Again, in the food industry, they have pathogen control systems. That's a specific part that would need auditing, as well as the management system. In product certification, there's testing of products along the way as well. So there's multiple layers of this going on. What I did want to do, Mike, just at this point, was to put some metrics around this. I mean, how big are these opportunities? How much of this is that's going on? I mentioned before that we estimate that there's tens, if not hundreds of thousands being trained a year as auditors. Well, just to put this in perspective, for ISO 9001, which is the biggest of the management system standards for quality management system, there are around 1.3 million certified organisations out there at the time. Each one of those needs to have an internal auditor, as I've mentioned. Each one of them needs to be externally audited at least once a year, possibly more. And so there's over 1 million places that need auditors on a regular basis. And that's just the quality management system. If you look at the second biggest of them, ISO 14001, that's for environmental management systems. And there's over 500,000 organisations that have environmental management systems. Sometimes they'll be the same places, they'll have more than one. But even so, an environmental management system, like a quality management system, needs internal auditors. So you could start with quality, you may move into auditing environmental management systems. Or the third biggest of them is health and safety. And there are some hundreds of thousands of those as well that are out there. And this is just to name these three that are the bigger ones of them. There are also things like medical devices, there are information security, there are new versions of standards and so on.
Food safety, sure, there's a lot of them. Yep.
Now, what I would say, Mike, is that you don't need to be stuck in your own organisation doing the same thing for years on years on years either. Moving around in this community is also something that we would recommend to people to look out there. You could choose to generalise, you could choose to work in quality management across many things, or you could choose to specialise. You might choose an industry such as aerospace or automotive or healthcare, whatever it might be, to specialise and really know everything about it. You might focus on different parts of the world, different countries, or you might travel widely as well to do some of these things. So the scale of these opportunities is huge. At this stage, really, I've only talked about the ISO world as well. And I would say that there are other sectors that use auditors. In the education system, we know that happens. In the healthcare system, we know that happens too. In military areas, that happens as well. So this is not confined to just those that are working with quality, environmental health and safety and so on. There's an enormous community of possible career opportunities out there for people to explore. And I just wanted to just give a flavour of this, really. It's not a definitive version of those. But the community that we've established, Mike, the Exemplar Global community, does have a sub-community for career
Indeed, we
development.
do.
And I would
Yep.
really encourage people to go and join that community and talk to each other about what's possible out there. And you never know what leads might well develop. At Exemplar Global, we also periodically issue a Job Connect, which posts jobs for people to apply for. And this is an area I think too, Mike, that we could probably do more in the coming months and years to try and make the connection between the need for auditors and those that aspire to be in auditing. We know that many organisations struggle to find good auditors. Certification bodies constantly do that. Many auditors these days are contract auditors. They work for themselves, actually. So they may work for multiple people. And auditing isn't just something that gets you stuck in a dead end of auditing either. Many auditors can work as trainers themselves. They could work as consultants, in fact. You shouldn't be consulting and auditing to the same organisations, but you could certainly do both of those things.
Mm-hmm.
And then personal opinion here as much as anything, but I think auditing gives you an excellent platform to move on to further your career in a more generalist way, in senior roles for quality, like a senior quality officer, for example, where you may not be doing the auditing anymore, but you understand the value of the auditing, or even into general management. I think the insights that auditors get, the experience they get, whether it be from their own organisations or from multiple others, is invaluable in understanding how organisations work, what the risks are, what the areas of deficiency are that they can do. So I think auditors make really good general and senior managers as well. So there's really no end to the possibilities out there. As I say, I've worked for over 40 years, and my entree into auditing was a very future focused boss who wanted me to understand what the auditors were going to be looking for, to go out and find out what these management systems were about. And that's 40 odd years ago, Mike, and I've managed to forge a career out of it. And if I can do it, anybody can do it. So the career of auditing, the world's your oyster.
I like that because you're talking about and you can just see it with this schematic here, this slide. The opportunities are just endless. There's a term that we don't use a lot anymore in conformity assessment. Maybe we do. I just don't hear it as much as I used to. Is benchmarking. And I think that that great organizations understand the value that you can get from other great organizations. So what you mentioned just a moment ago there about the fact that auditing gives you a great opportunity as a springboard into upper level management, executive roles, where you've seen dozens, maybe more, maybe even 100 or more different organizations in your auditing career, and you've seen who does it well, who does it not so well, changes they made, the way they handle risk, the way that they document, all these different things that are so important for an organization to ensure quality in their products and services, to be efficient, to hire properly, and to deal with suppliers, and all the things that you need to do to have a successful organization is really derived and understood best through the auditing function. So if you've audited and you've seen a lot of organizations, you have a great step up into roles with many different organizations doing many different things. So it really is a wide range of opportunities.
Mike, you're absolutely right. And you lead me to make one other comment too, and that is that doing auditing really makes a difference. There is an element of compliance to it. I used to take the view that you're there to establish compliance, not find fault and non-compliance. But those are the fact of it. And often that sort of perception of the auditors is that's all you're doing. But it's also, these management systems are also about improvement, and the experience that auditors have identify opportunities for improvement. And there's ways of doing that, but certainly from an internal audit perspective, seeing what happens, looking for improvement, and organisations that are really sincere about the management systems are looking for that. So the opportunity there for an auditor to really make a difference, whether that be to your own organisation or to one that you're auditing externally, second or third party, is quite substantial. And that can be a difference beyond the organisation too. A lot of these standards are used for facilitating trade, and I mentioned also on this slide, I didn't mention it at the time, but you'll see there at the top, regulators. There's an element of regulators who are ensuring that standards are met, whether that be a national standard, whether it be a trade standard for importing goods, whether it be an additional tier of standards that people choose to adopt or that might be expressed by the retailers. But every one of those also offers opportunities for improvement, and those auditors get exposure to understanding those and the influence that these have on an organisation. One of the parts that uh, goes into lead, I'm not sure how well it's often considered, but leading into a 9001 audit is about understanding the context of an organisation. So understanding that context that they work in, what are the inputs that are there? How do you not only comply but improve performance, reduce loss, wastage, ensure safety of whatever flavour? You really are influencing those things, and certainly over the course of time, you can have a very positive influence on that. It's not always terribly visible, but it's actually there. And society as a whole, without even knowing it often, is reliant on these structures being in place to be able to have confidence and trust in the products and services that are being pervaded around the world. So you're right, Mike, it really does make a difference as well.
And I think the other thing I always kind of consider when I'm talking to folks about their career opportunities is the fact that there's foundational pieces to this. There's things that are kind of universal. You need to understand the standards. You need to read the standards and understand what the standards mean. You need to do the training. You need to keep yourself up to date on the latest thinking from fellow practitioners and people that are in the field that are looking at these things. 2026, as we know, is going to be a major revision of these key standards, the key ISO standards that you discussed here today. And you need to understand what the language of those standards means. That's the building block. That's the foundation of doing this work, is understanding the words and within the context of the organization. You just touched on it. Within the context of the organization that you're working for or auditing for, you need to really understand what they're doing, what their inputs and outputs are, and audit according to the language of those standards. It's really important to be up to date on that stuff.
If I could just touch on too the community again.
Yeah,
Oftentimes, auditors, although there are many thousands of them, as I've mentioned, often in some isolation within their own organisations or
sure.
within the ones that you're going to visit. You're the minority, certainly. And finding others that understand what you're going through, it's an intrinsically stressful process, potentially at least, is auditing, is important for your professional development, for your confidence, for learning, for solving problems, for finding out what others have done, finding mentors in there as well, all of which help you open opportunities, connections that you might have. And the community of auditors is a really good place. It's a really good resource to be able to go and find out about other things. What do other people do with such and such a situation? How would you handle this? What have you found that's common in there? Those sorts of things, I think, create a satisfaction in the role as well as the actual execution of it as well. So it's partly professional development, it's partly networking, it's partly benchmarking, and it's all there in this community, which can be very satisfying for a career at whatever stage you do it. Some people do this
Right.
relatively early in their career, some do it later when they're bringing all the experience that they've already had, they bring that to bear into things. Some people do it temporarily, and some people do it for a longer term. All of these are viable options for developing a career.
And important options. And that is part and parcel why we developed that community, was to have that resource for folks to just shoot the bull, kind of just to have some conversations. And they don't even have to be necessarily high level technical conversations. As you mentioned, it can be just, boy, have you ever seen this situation, or I have this issue, or I'm kind of wondering about this opportunity, what are the pros and cons from those in the community that might be able to help me understand a little bit about what's behind door number one or door number two. Those are really valuable things for people as all of us move forward in our careers to have that kind of a resource.
Indeed. And Mike, we are proudly part of the ASQ family
That
with
too.
the American Society for Quality. And that community of people closely associated with us has some specialist areas that could be of interest to people too. There is an audit division within ASQ. So membership of ASQ gives you access to those. Now that's a significant community in its own right. And those are people that are specialists and understanding auditing as well as those that you'll find here in the Exemplar Global community.
Great point. Yep, absolutely. Well, that's great, Andrew. Thank you so much for that. That was a really good session. I think I got a lot out of it, as I usually do. I've heard you kind of give that overview a few times, and I think it was a really suitable presentation for this format too. So, thank you for doing that. And for all of you out there that are watching right now, if you have questions, please do write us at info. You see it right there, info@exemplarglobal.org. We'll answer any questions you have about this or any other topics, either at our expo or just in general. Check out our community too, which is live now. You can check that out at community.exemplarglobal.org. We'd love to see you there. And claim your CPD for this session too. We always say that. Make sure you get that to show your commitment to continuing development in your career. Andrew, great job. Really, thank you for joining us on that. I think we all got a lot out of it. So really appreciate you taking the time to do that for us.
Good luck to everyone with their careers.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, thanks again for you all being there, and we'll see you at the next session here at Exemplar Global's Expo.